It took 3 years to organize. It required absolute secrecy. It changed the course of history. On a single day, June 6, 1944, 200,000 Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, France. The greatest invasion in history was devised by the finest military minds. But there were others who toiled behind the scenes. The inventors, the mavericks, the forgotten heroes drafted in with a specific command. To create a top-secret armory. Machines that could breathe fire. Tanks that could swim. Gadgets and mechanical contraptions that could smash through Hitler's defenses. This was Operation Overlord. This was D-Day. "60 years later, the grand plan behind Operation Overlord still seems hugely ambitious. Even its chief architect, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, was not sure it would succeed. On the night before the invasion, Eisenhower scribbled a statement that if D-Day should fail, he would take the blame. Eisenhower hoped he could outwit the Germans. His forces would not invade France at Calais, the point closest to England. Instead, over 5,000 vessels would journey an extra 10 hours to hit a stretch of open beach further down the French coast and take the Germans by surprise. If they could penetrate the German defenses, the Allies could then sweep up towards Berlin from the west. And with the Soviet Union driving in from the east, overwhelm Hitler's forces. The liberation of Europe hinged on establishing that initial toehold in France. Getting it wrong meant jeopardizing the lives of thousands of men and throwing the fate of the war into doubt. Getting it right meant first gathering the latest intelligence about what the Germans had in store for them. And that had to be done in complete secrecy. An X-craft lurks at a shallow depth off the coast of France. Inside this state-of-the-art mini-submarine are 5 Allied spies.
We beached the craft and put the periscope up, which is very, no thicker than a walking stick, and brilliant vision from it too. We were able to see the German soldiers very well. What they didn't know was that within about 8 feet was a commander of Royal Navy, a major of Royal Engineers, and 2 other naval officers.
What they were spying on could cost them their lives. The German soldiers were hard at work building an elaborate system of beach defenses under the direct supervision of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel.
Rommel had just taken over command and been round, and we knew this from intelligence, and really stirred them up. And so it was an amazing amount of activity going on to develop the defenses there. They really were working incredibly hard. We were most surprised.
The Germans had anticipated a seaborne invasion. They were installing a series of death traps hidden beneath the water at high tide to destroy any boat that dared make its way onto the beaches.
These significant round things are mines. They're a type of mine called the teller mine. They're on a post confronting incoming invading craft. Bear in mind that much of what you can now see, you can see only because the sea is low. They had expected invasion to come when the sea was high, and this lot would be largely invisible. If one of these goes off, it makes a hell of a loud bang, and God help anyone that's inside the vessel.
The next line of defense was comprised of hedgehogs, 6-foot-high obstacles made of solid steel.
If, for example, a thin-hulled vessel comes off the sea, a troop-carrying thing, remember these may well be still underwater, but their hulls will be ripped apart by this.
Rommel was counting on the Allies invading at high tide. This would minimize the time their troops would spend crossing the beach under enemy fire. When the tide came in, it would hide his underwater killing field. The Allies needed a way to ferry their troops over this deadly obstacle course. New Orleans, the home of jazz and jambalaya, was perhaps a strange place to find the solution. The Allies had been planning an invasion since 1941, but they were hampered by a chronic shortage of landing craft. And for D-Day, they were going to need thousands. But one small-time boat builder with big ideas had the confidence to take on the job. Andrew Jackson Higgins.
Oh, he could sit at the dining room table, and if we had guests, he could tell jokes for hours and hours and hours. You'd wonder, when are you going to stop, Pop?
This joker hardly had the typical credentials one needed to win a big wartime shipping contract. His boatyard was not even located on the water. It sat uncomfortably on the main street of New Orleans, and his business practices were not always on the right side of the law.
As the Depression was going on, there were few people who wanted to buy boats. Business was bad. He had to find a way to drum up some business. Well, the rum runners bringing rum in because of prohibition in the United States, you couldn't sell alcohol. The rum runners were bringing it in from Cuba, but the Coast Guard was catching them. So Higgins approached the rum runners and said, guys, what you need are faster boats, and I can design them for you. And he did. Now, once the rum runners had the new boats, Higgins then went to the Coast Guard and said, look, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but the rum runners are really making headway coming in through Louisiana. What you guys need are faster boats. So Higgins was doing a little creative marketing on the side, and it worked. It kept him in business throughout.
This renegade American entrepreneur was confident he could build the perfect assault craft, and for good reason. He already had one in his boat shed. His own recently uncovered private film archive reveals that Higgins was fated to be, as Eisenhower would one day describe him, the man who won the war for us. About a decade before D-Day, he had pioneered a boat that could skim over underwater obstacles, not Rommel's exploding ones, but the floating logs and mangrove roots of the Mississippi River. It had a shallow draft and a propeller and rudder cleverly tucked away in its hull. He called it the Eureka, and he was desperate for the American Navy to take notice.
As the designer, builder of amphibious and landing